In every city, there are stories that never made the papers. Not because they weren't important, but because they were inconvenient. They live in forgotten files, in half-finished investigations, in questions no one wanted answered. This isn't where justice always wins. This is where the echoes remain. This is Reverberating Noir. The river was running high that spring. The snowmelt from the bighorns had turned the Yellowstone into a churning grey beast. And there, on a gravel bar near the mouth of Trapper's Creek, they found him. Not in battle, not in a raid. Just stillness. A man on the ground, his horse standing by, calm as if waiting for a command that would never come. This was April 21st, 1867. The man was John Bozeman, and the only sound was the water.
The calm horse is the first detail that unravels the obvious story. If this had been a sudden attack, a war party sweeping down from the bluffs, the horse would have been spooked. It would have bolted. The fact it stayed, saddled, and bridled suggests the shooter was known. Suggests a moment of terrifying normalcy before the end.
John Bozeman was 32. A builder. A trailblazer. The man who carved a shortcut through the heart of the Sioux hunting grounds, the Bozeman Trail. A name that would map the future of Montana. But on that morning, he was just a body with a single, clean hole in his back. No scalps taken, no signs of a desperate fight. His gold watch was in his pocket. His pistols were in their holsters. The only violation was the one that mattered.
The surgeon's report from Fort Ellis is chilling in its simplicity. The bullet entered below and behind the left shoulder blade, traveled forward through the chest, exiting near the right nipple. A shot from behind. At a distance, this was not a close-range execution. It was a hunter's shot, or a symbol's shot. The trajectory alone tells us the killer was trailing him, watching him ride away.
He had ridden ahead of his companion that afternoon. Nelson Story, a cattle baron, a man of immense standing. Story continued to the fort. Bozeman turned off the main trail toward the river. He told Story he was meeting someone. Someone. That's the last confirmed sighting, a man who had stared down armies and hostile nations, taken by a private appointment he never kept.
The word someone is the thread. It implies choice, intent. Not a random encounter, not a stray bullet in a chaotic skirmish. This was planned. The shooter knew Bozeman's habits. Knew he'd be riding alone along that specific stretch. Knew he'd be within rifle range from that particular high bank or stand of cottonwoods.
The investigation that followed was as cold and muddy as the riverbank. Colonel Carrington at Fort Ellis declared it murder by unknown persons, and then the investigation froze. Not for lack of trying, but for a surfeit of silence. In Gallatin City, the rough settlement that would become Bozeman, Montana, every man had a secret, and many had a reason to keep this one.
The story that stuck for decades was the simplest. He was killed by Blackfeet, Niitsitapi warriors, retaliating for the invasion of their lands. It was a satisfying narrative. The trailblazer felled by the savage he'd trespassed upon. It painted the frontier in clear, dramatic strokes. It was also, with near certainty, a lie.
The Blackfeet were powerful, but their territory was centered north of the Missouri. In the spring of 1867, with the Sioux and Cheyenne at war with the United States along the very trail Bozeman built, a large Blackfeet war party this far south, this close to a U.S. Army fort, would have been an event of seismic proportions. Armies would have noted it. Traders would have reported it. There is no contemporary record. None.
And the wound pattern contradicts it. The Plains Indian ambush was a precise, terrifying art. It was not a single long-distance shot to the back. That was inefficient. Their method was a close-range volley chest, head followed by a lightning charge. The surgeon's diagram shows a delivery from behind, at a distance. It's the signature of a lone marksman lying in wait, not a coordinated war party.
So, where did that story come from? From a need. A community looking at a dead founder, a man who brought both prosperity and discord, and needing the cause to be vast, historical, external. Something they could not control. Killed by Indians was a tragedy. Killed by one of our own was a cancer.
Historian Gene Shively did the forensic work in 1973. He cross-referenced army reports, tribal movements, the surgeon's notes. His conclusion was unequivocal. The Indian story is almost certainly a later fabrication. There is no evidence any hostile Indians were in that specific area at that specific time. The myth was a blanket thrown over a stain.
If not a war party, then what? The evidence points inward, to the muddy, gossip-ridden, morally combustible streets of Gallatin City itself, to the one reputation that shadowed Bozeman more persistently than any war cloud, his conduct with married women.
His political enemy, W. Corbin, didn't hesitate. He called Bozeman a whoremonger, a man who, in Corbin's words, pursued the wives of other men with a persistence that was notorious. This wasn't idle rumor. It was a public scandal. In a tightly knit frontier community where a man's honor and his family's name were his primary currency, Bozeman was a walking provocation.
Think on the facts again. The shot from behind, the lack of theft. The killer wanted him, not his horse, not his watch. The target was the man. The method was an ambush along a familiar trail. This is the modus operandi of a personal grudge, of a revenge so cold it required waiting, of a justice sought far from any sheriff's ear.
And then, the silence. The investigation didn't fail because leads ran out. It failed because no one would talk. Why would they? To accuse a local man of avenging his marriage would be to ignite a feud. To testify against a man who had just removed a social cancer from their midst? In a place where formal law was weak and personal honor was law, that testimony would have been worthless and dangerous. The community chose, collectively, to look away. Their complicity was the true cover-up.
The most probable scenario is not epic. It is sordid. It is a husband, or a brother, or a jilted lover. He learns of Bozeman's planned ride. He positions himself on that high bank. He waits. He sees the familiar horse and rider approach. He takes aim at the back, the safest shot from a concealed position. He fires. He watches the man fall. He melts back into the timber, into the town, into the crowd that will ask no questions.
This reframes everything. For all his role in igniting a continental war with native nations, Bozeman's final battle was the most common, most intimate kind of frontier violence. Not a clash of cultures on a grand scale. A private quarrel made fatal. The greatest threat on that lonely trail wasn't on the bluffs. It was in the shadows cast by his own life, by the wives he pursued, by the husbands he enraged.
And this is where the dread truly creeps in, because this case is not an anomaly. It is a pattern, a blueprint for how such things are swallowed by time and silence.
The formula is depressingly simple. Step 1. A victim with a controversial, morally charged personal life. Step 2. A killing method that suggests a known associate, not a stranger. Step 3. A community with a vested interest in the status quo where the victim is polarizing and the killer is, in their eyes, an avenger or a rival of equal standing. Step 4. A lack of physical evidence that can't be explained away. Step 5. A rapid, quiet cessation of official inquiry, fueled not by corruption, but by apathy and fear. Step 6. The replacement of the ugly truth with a grand external myth. Indians, bandits, fate, anything but community complicity.
It's a template that repeats. From the frontier to the present, the person who knows the truth has no incentive to speak. The person who benefits from the myth has every incentive to propagate it. The investigation stalls, not because it's hard, but because it's toxic, and the story crystallizes into legend, sanitized, and safe.
What makes Bozeman's case a ghost that still walks is how perfectly it fits this template. The Indian attack story served everyone. It gave the community an other to blame. It preserved the frontier myth. It allowed the real killer and those who knew to walk free, their secret a shared burden. The system didn't fail. It functioned exactly as designed, to protect the community's cohesion over the pursuit of a messy, destabilizing truth.
So we stand on the bank of that river 157 years later. The gravel bar is gone, eroded by the same water that washed the blood away. The city of Bozeman thrives. The trail is a memory, a name on a highway sign. We have the wound description, we have the political pamphlet smearing his character, We have the historian's deduction. We have the silence. We do not have a name. This is the noir of history. Not the gumshoe with a 38, but the archivist with a doubt. The quiet realization that the most profound mysteries are not locked in vaults, but in plain sight, hidden by consensus. John Bozeman opened a path west. His own path ended in a question mark. And that question mark is the trail we still walk. It asks, how many other solved stories are just comfortable lies? How many other stones lie undisturbed, because the truth underneath would crack the foundation? If this story of a riverbank, a single shot, and a community's pact of silence has settled into your bones, if it makes you look at the official histories with a new, colder eye, then we've done our job here at Reverberating Noir. Subscribe. Stay in the dark with us.
The most haunting detail is the one we cannot prove, not who pulled the trigger, but how many knew. The echo of that single gunshot did not fade. It was absorbed. And in being absorbed, it became the foundation of a lie. The reverberation is not the shot itself. It is the silence that followed, and that silence is still here.
The recording ends here, but the case doesn't. Somewhere, the evidence still exists. The questions still wait. If this story stayed with you, if it followed you into the silence, subscribe to Reverberating Noir. Not for us, for the stories that refuse to disappear.
Because as long as something doesn't make sense, the truth is still out there. And someone will find it.
Until next time, keep listening to the dark.